السلام عليكم، مرحبا بكم في قناة Forex.
In this section, we'll learn what is a trend line, what does a trend line represent, and the types of trend lines you can actually draw. And to do that, we need a price chart. So let me move this introductory slide over, and we have a price chart. Now, simply put, what is a trend line, or what is a line? A line simply connects 2 points. Our first point and our second point. Now, within the scope of technical analysis, these points are typically price highs or price lows. These are our trend lines here. Now, just so you'll know before I continue much further, and something that I'm going to repeat quite often in this video, is that the significance of the trend line is directionally proportional to the importance of points 1 and points 2. That's something to remember when drawing trend lines. Now, what does a trend line actually represent? Well, it represents actually the psychology of the market, specifically the psychology between the bulls and the bears. If you have an upward sloping trend line, it lets you know that the bulls are in control. If you have a downward sloping trend line, it lets you know that the bears are in control. Moreover, the actual angle or slope of a trend line can determine whether or not the market is extremely optimistic, as it was here, or extremely pessimistic, as it was here. So what types of trend lines can you draw now that we know what a trend line is and what a trend line actually represents? Well, here's the fun part. You can draw trend lines a number of different ways. You can draw them horizontally, and by doing this, you can identify resistance and support. You can draw them vertically. And what I mean by that is you can draw them vertically to identify moments in time. You primarily apply trend lines in this manner if you're going to be doing cycle analysis. Or you can draw trend lines. Let me clean the chart up here. At an angle. Like that. So there's really not a wrong way to actually draw a trend line. Because if you draw them along the vertical axis, you're analyzing time. If you draw them on a horizontal axis, you're analyzing price. And if you draw them at an angle, you're actually analyzing both price and time. And this is why I think trend lines are so important, and for a very simple tool, they can be very, very effective. Now, the next portion of this video, I'll explain a number of techniques for actually drawing the trend lines. But in this section, I think we've answered what is a trend line. Again, it's simply a line drawn between 2 points. And what we're going to learn, and what I hope to illustrate clearly in this video, is that the significance of a trend line is determined by the significance of the points you draw the line between. Also, we've learned what a trend line actually represents. It represents market psychology, bulls versus bears, and also how extremely optimistic or extremely pessimistic they can be basis the slope of an actual trend line. If a slope is very shallow, there's not much excitement going on in that market. However, if the slope or the angle of a trend line is very sharp, we know that irrational exuberance has taken over. And we've learned the types of trend lines that you can actually draw. vertical, horizontal, and at an angle or sloped.
شكرا لك على مشاهدة الفيديو. من فضلك ضع لايك واشتراك في القناة تشجيعا لنا على تقديم الأفضل في القادم إن شاء الله.